Well, what's up, guys? It's Chris Moulton, Andrew Martin. It's the Union Report, and of course, the gaffer, Jordan Stewart, here with us. How you doing today?
Doing? Good, thank you. Yourself?
Doing good. It's a big news day for the club. We just got news of the roster changes for, I guess, the 2025 season. And so, as a player yourself, I'm sure you've had those times when, you know, it was the end of a season for you and maybe you didn't necessarily get an extension or something, but can you walk us through what it's like to be a player working with an agent? Because we have literally no idea what that's like. I don't have an agent, as you might be surprised, but
I don't know. I think every club varies. I think a lot of time they normally, whenever the season ends, whether it's whether you reach playoffs or season just ends in normal most of the time in England, depending on relegation, promotion, those kind of things. But in general, you normally take a week off and then you go in and speak to the coach. They either give you an answer or not, and then they will deal with the agent, or sometimes they'll tell you there and then their thought process on whether they're going to keep you or release you for the next season. And I've been in both boats. Sometimes being kept on, sometimes being released. But it's part of the game. It's probably the most difficult part when you're on the other side as a coach and as a player, because the uncertainty of what's next if you are not going to be coming back, and then obviously excitement if you are. So you normally go into the meetings like with mixed feelings, because you don't know what's going to happen unless you, I don't know, maybe a striker that scored 20 goals and then normally you're the one going in saying I'm leaving myself. So yeah, I think it's part of the game, but it's probably the part when guys are going. It's probably the least favorite part for myself.
Awesome.
And kind of tagging off that, now that you're a few years removed from your playing career, how difficult was it to transition from one side of the table to the other, so to speak?
I don't think it was too bad. I think it's part of playing is transition into the coaching side. I think as a coach, you're kind of managing people. So I think leadership and management, you kind of have to do both. I think I'm a big believer of more leadership than actual management of people, because you want people to grow, and not kind of just say this is the way we do it. You, like in playing, right? You have a structure, but within that structure, you let players and people, staff, give freedom to grow and to learn and to ask questions and evolve. So I think it's that side is important. But I think in that actual transition itself wasn't too bad.
And I want to pivot for just a minute, because you mentioned promotion and relegation, which is I think a hot button topic in U.S. soccer. How vital do you feel that the promotion relegation system is in world football?
I think it's difficult, more so in America, because of the type of finance it takes to bring an organization in, right? Whether, say, for instance, Charlotte or San Diego, 500 million plus, but then if that team was to get relegated, like how much cost they would incur and lose through a revenue standpoint. So I think the model is more difficult in America. Obviously, in England, that's all we've known, right? Or in Europe, or most other countries around the world. But I think it's in America, it's going to be more difficult to transition into pro reg. And like I've been on both sides of the fence. You get promoted and you're happy, and most of the time your salary goes up. And then if you get relegated, like your salary goes down, and
time to get the hamburger helper.
There's more chance of like them recruiting like a different roster because just of cost constraints. But I think it's both sides. Is like it's highs and lows. But I think in America it's going to be more difficult to change the structure that's currently in.
Gotcha. Okay, Andrew, you got another question?
Oh, I always have questions. So with the news today of the preliminary roster coming out of who's coming back and who's not, fans will see that about a third, give or take, of the returning players are currently under contract, and that may change a little bit depending on circumstances. But What would you say to fans regarding kind of the big change, so to speak, entering the off season?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned in the season, right? I think it was important to look at the totality of Monterey Bay FC and to see things we could change. And I think a big one for me is sometimes you need to have a clean slate to try and progress, right? Obviously, that when it involves players, it's never a nice thing, and I think there's a lot of the players that have probably won't be coming next season. Like they've had over the years, have had a good connection with the fans, so it's always hard. But as you guys know yourself, in football, it's forever changing and forever evolving. So I think if we want to try and progress to where we want to, which is the playoffs, and we haven't done that for 3 years now. So what can I do to help progress that in a way? And I think one of them was to have these changes, right? You're never gonna make everyone happy within that scenario, but I think if you ask me this question in a year's time, I think it would be for the best. And that's me not saying anything bad about the players that we had, but I think just evolution of teams, you always have to evolve, right? Even on the field, and I think that was a bigger part of where we could improve was having a different mindset. So that's a decision we had as a club, and we're positive and confident in what we're building. So that's the main focus of going into 2025, knowing we're going to compete. And like I said, we need to make the playoffs. Like anything outside of that is not a good season. So
Interesting. So I'm trying to formulate this in my head. Sports, professional sports specifically, is so unique of a business because I have to imagine not ever playing professional sports, but playing on sports teams. There's an element of emotion and connection that a manager, a player, a fan, they all have this very unique dynamic tied to the team. Would you be able to speak just a little bit about how difficult is it to divorce yourself from the emotion when it's time to do the business side of football?
I think it's difficult. I think a lot of emotion in totality of soccer is on a Saturday or game day, right? I think outside of that, it's a lot of prep, a lot of coming into the office and going through depth chart of players and that kind of stuff. So I think you have the emotion side of you want to win, you want to compete, those things, but then also you have to evaluate the totality of what you have and how you can improve that. It's like any business, right? If you're doing the end of your finance means and you're not hitting this quota, okay, so then how do you improve that to then get to where you want? And it's the same in sport, right? If I can improve from not making the playoffs to getting the playoffs, that's how can I improve that? So that's the mindset I have and we have as an organization, as a staff, to what if we look at the last 3 seasons, how can we then develop that and take the good things and then try and put that on a trajectory of improving to then get into the playoffs and then winning the cup, right? That should be our aim, and that's the reason for my mindset is to do that we have to make changes somewhere, right? It can't be just all off the field, it has to be on the field as well. And like I said, it's tough scenarios because you never want to let players go, but I think, like you said, in any sport, it's the turnovers.
It's gonna
crazy,
happen,
right? It's gonna happen. So maybe at not this higher number in the future, but I just think it was something that I thought was part of the process that we needed to do to evolve. And like I said, that's nothing to take away from the guys that was here before, because like I said, every game, everyone gave their all, and as people first, they was always came into training, even when we was losing. Came in and gave 100% in training. So I think that's super important to state. But I think to progress the right way, these were the changes we felt that we needed to make.
Great. Andrew, you got anything?
Yeah, I imagine whenever the offseason comes, any club or manager or staff has any number of players outside of that club that they've had their eye on. But I also imagine that trying to put all the pieces together is like taking a 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle and throwing the pieces on the table and being like, put the puzzle together. So I guess the question is, how do you even start identifying the players that you think are going to carry out the vision? And then, of course, you have to, convince them and work them into coming to you.
It's a whole process, right? I think you, like you said, you have players that you've identified and know fit the system well, whether it's what you've seen or what you've received on tape and those kind of things. And it's just you doing the due diligence of watching more tape, speaking to staff that maybe know them, what type of character there is. I think that's, for me, is an important one. Of you can have talent here, but if you're not the right person, or you have the wrong characteristics, it's not going to suit us because I think culture is a big guideline for us of like having the right people in the building that then carry out the mindset onto the field, which is super important for us. So I think it's a lot of back and forth, and then like if they're in contract, then you have to have them conversations. Then it's salary wise, and it's back and forth. It's like I said, it's like any other business. When you get headhunted, you got the pros and cons of your old company and your new company, right? So it's nothing outside the norm with that, and just kind of speaking to the player and seeing short-term goals and long-term goals, and seeing if they're aligned with how you wanna play and your beliefs, and then from there, if everything ties well, then you end up signing. Like it's never just I want that player and then done and dusted. So
it'd be nice if it,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of like playing Football Manager. So
you come with me.
Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth, but I think we're on the right track. Obviously, staff and Simon and Mike are helping in those moments. So I think as an organisation, we'll be making progress, and then hopefully, we can over the end of the year and coming to New Year, we can share news of guys coming in. So that's the plan.
You have anything else?
That was my final question.
I got one final question, and I'm going to ask Simon the same thing. You're the only two English people I know. Which one of you would make a better James Bond? You or Simon?
I'll probably say Simon.
You think?
Simon's more cool and collective. I've got too much of an anger spark in me, so I think Simon's more level-headed and has a wider lens. Probably I do, so I'll probably say Simon. And he's better looking as well.
Awesome. Well, that's all we got today. Thanks so much for joining us again. We always appreciate your time.
For sure.
So
thanks for having me.
yeah, it's our pleasure.